Wet-Togetherness. Bodies exceed humanity. They remind us that we are part of something vaster and smaller, more complex, more connected than our mere existence as an atomized species. Our bodies, and bodies in general, are composed out of heterogeneity and multitudes. All bodies are wet collective bodies, defined by how they link to other bodies, places, environments, technologies. Think of breathing, clogging, decomposing, discharging, flushing, lubricating, melting, menstruating, transfusing. Bodies exist as trans and extra-territorial beings. They live in hybridity. This porous condition produces a planetary wet-togetherness, a commoning force that constitutes all bodies as collective hydro subjects. Wet-togetherness is a collaboration between e-flux and the 13th Shanghai Biennale, Bodies of Water, 水体. It is a series of 9 sound pieces in which a selection of Biennale contributors enact aqueousness through sound. Episode 5. Melting. It is precisely at the melting point of a pure substance that solid and liquid forms coexist and produce each other. Glaciers and seas, mountains and rivers, molten rocks, soils and climates. Entire worlds, several hundred to several thousand years old, melt into other worlds, making unexpected currents, struggles, and living conditions emerge. The following conversation is joined by Minghao, Chen and Michael Wang.
I'm Michael Wang. My practice takes on systems, technological, economic, or ecological as sites for artistic intervention. I'm especially concerned with landscape and the ways by which it is shaped by these human and non-human systems. Melting conjures at first soft sounds, a steady drip-drip, pops and cracks. But I move from these close-up views toward the larger, global scale, melting ice caps and the ominous crash and thunder of calving glaciers and the breakup of great ice shelves. I think also of seasonal cycles and their sounds, the babble of spring meltwater and the roar of swollen rivers. My work for the Shanghai Biennale, 10,000 li, 100 billion kilowatt hours, begins with meltwater, the melting glaciers at the source of the Yangtze River. The work is a refrigeration machine that produces an artificial glacier, a recreation of the glaciers at the origin of the Yangtze. Taking its power from the Shanghai electric grid, this machine derives its energy in part from the Three Gorges Dam on the Yangtze. In effect, the river recreates its own origin at its terminus in Shanghai. Its power comes, in fact, from meltwater. And not only its power, the machine uptakes water from the Shanghai tap. This water, too, comes from the Yangtze, and in part from distant melting glaciers. Vaporized in high-pressure jets, the water becomes again snow. The clock is turned backwards. The river flows back to its source. Shanghai is at the river's mouth, its endpoint, but it is also a part of the river. The city arose from swamps and wetlands. It is a city that is neither fully wet nor fully dry, at the border zone between river, land, and sea. But the modern city, like the modern state, fixes boundaries. Lines are drawn between the wet and the dry. The river itself becomes a line, a vector moving from west to east. But if Shanghai fixes its end, what determines its beginning? What defines the origin of a river? A river that is connected to a vast terrain and fed by many tributaries. A river that is made not only of rushing water, but of ice, rain, and fog. Geographers chart the source of a river at the farthest headwaters of a single tributary. For the Yangtze, it has been decided, the river begins in the meltwaters of the Jianjun Glacier and the Tanggula Mountains of the Qinghai Tibetan Plateau. The river as a line connects this distant glacier to Shanghai. The appearance of a glacier, then, in subtropical Shanghai is not wholly incongruous. City and glacier are already linked. Shanghai is linked to the dam as well by lines other than the river itself. Beginning at the Three Gorges, high-voltage power lines carry the electricity produced by the dam toward Shanghai. These transmission lines run alongside the river, mimicking its flow from west to east. There are now two kinds of current flowing toward Shanghai, hydrological and electrical. The work 10,000 Li, 100 billion kilowatt hours, makes reference to a tradition of landscape painting, beginning in the Song, in which the Yangtze is depicted across the length of a rolled scroll, from what was then considered its source, the misty mountains of Sichuan, to its outlet at the sea. The river is already imagined as a single line. These paintings are typically titled 10,000 Li along the Yangtze. 1 Li, an ancient unit of measurement, is approximately 1/2 kilometer. A painting held by the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C., and dating to the Southern Song, is perhaps the earliest surviving example. The painting unrolls to a length of over 16.5 meters and is labeled with 240 significant place names along the river's course, from Wenchuan to Haimen, many of historical or literary interest. The river becomes a cultural artifact. 100 billion kilowatt hours refers to the annual energy production of the Three Gorges Dam, the world's largest power plant. At the dam, the river becomes a component of a machine itself, the roar of water transformed into the hum of electricity. The river becomes a technological artifact. Contained in pipes and cables, the river's water and its power feed the machines and make up the work 10,000 Li, 100 billion kilowatt hours. Technologically combined, fire and water give rise to ice. The work is an act of displacement, linking the river's terminus back to its source. On the one hand, this is a work about energy. The power of the Yangtze fuels the energy-intensive recreation of its icy origins. On the other, it puts on display the climatic and geological origins of this power. This site is not static. The Zhanggandiru Glacier, the ultimate source of the Yangtze, is melting. This glacier forms a part of what has been called the Third Pole. The Himalayas and the Tibetan Plateau contain the largest ice reserves outside the polar ice caps. But the region's glaciers are melting at an even faster rate than those in the Arctic or Antarctic. Here, that meltwater powers the glacier's reconstruction. The power of the sun melts the glacier. The Three Gorges captures its energy as electricity. The artwork's chillers transform heat into cold, and the water from the Yangtze freezes once again.
I am an artist named Chen Jianjun. I was born in 1981. My wife, Minghao, was born in 1982 and is also an artist. We work together and have been collaborating since 2010. We spend most of our time in Chengdu, in China's Sichuan province. Silence. Ticking. Converging. Rupturing. And then magma. The sounds of melting, some are known to us and some unknown. Some we have witnessed and some we have not. Listening is related to distance and awareness as well as perception. It will tell you stories and talk to you. Rivers originate at the top of snowy mountains, where glaciers melt. The timing is synchronized with our creation and our activities around river systems. Melting is not an entirely natural outcome in the global context of climate change. We may say that contemporary melting is not completely natural should we care about water's ecological history. Melting aids us in considering both dynamic and our inherent position. Imagine if each one of us, whether human or non-human, were a river system, that kind of continuous flowing through mountains and rivers. Feeling nature in yourself would be a geological movement within the river system.
在山水边缘身体力行地感受自然的实地考察，就意味着一个自身水系的地质运动。
Melting makes me think of where hundreds of rivers converge into the Min River. People have an awareness of water and its various physical forms, such as clouds.
性的水是多态的，云、泥、
mud,
泉、
springs,
冰
ice,
等等。
etc. in Tibet.
这些融化
The birthplace of rivers. These meltwaters are also entwined with humans in games,
沐浴、
bathing,
治疗、
therapy, and
破坏。
destruction. The slopes and river systems of the Hongduan Mountains present a rich variety of melted forms due to their unique geography. And it is only when you work locally in this unique environment that you can recognize that.
这是地方性特定的地理环境的工作才能认识。
Magma, for example, is melted rock that forms under high temperature and pressure.
高温、高压，
Geography's tales take place over a wide area deep inside the Earth, with various elements transported to the Earth's surface as rocks thanks to geological energy, which also allows us to understand the significance of the Earth's depth.
让我们了解
There was a large earthquake in the Min River Basin in 2008 that placed past ecological events in a broader context. In the displayed work, we analyzed geological messages in both rocks produced solely by the Earth and those that have been affected by human society. We must recognize how important
在
this is.
展示的作品中，我们研究了地球自身的地质岩石信息。
The two works, Water System Shelter Number 1 and Number 2, are the fruits of artistic studies done in the upper reaches of the Min River and the ancient Dujiangyan irrigation system. We discussed practices to a limited extent and fused issues such as landscape, livelihood, climate change, and alternative futures through collaboration with residents and researchers. We also paid attention to local policies that were adopted after the 2008 Sichuan earthquake and the impacts of post-disaster reconstruction. Our attempt is to extend the relationship between historical disasters and contemporary life.
也关注了在08年四川地震后的当地政策和灾后重建带来的影响有哪些。
The audience will see a not for rain and wind structure called the Water System Shelter in the video for Water System Shelter Number 1, which we built with the Qiang people using local timber that was abandoned after the earthquake. It was superimposed atop another construction that was built using local traditional methods.
与羌族的参与者一起搭建了一座不遮风雨的水系避难所空间装置。
The Shibi, or shaman, performed a dance for the rivers. It was his first time in the Yanmen Valley, and he danced to the beat of a sheepskin drum in tribute to the rivers. We, together with the local architects, sang for the architecture and discussed possibilities of sustainable housing with local youths inside the building. We also talked about their different lifestyles, how during Reconstruction, economic policies for plum tree co-planting brought a growing market to the area, and how the market affected this co-planting. Meanwhile, plum planting may threaten traditional sustainable agriculture and lead to losses in the diversity of local species. The Qiang language exists side by side with farming and construction activities and would also face decline.
市场的控制，同时威胁着可持续的传统农业。
Working with the soil, Water System Shelter Number 2 has been featured in various media and still sheds light on reconstruction and local policies after the 2008 Sichuan earthquake. When disasters and shelters become more and more common, our feelings for each other and the distances between us can be no longer calculated in specific physical measurements. What we consider is the basis and structure of a disaster and how we can reveal it in our work. We discuss how recurring disasters that took place in the upper reaches of the Min River, in a complicated tectonic area that is non-anthropocentric, prompts us to analyze the post-earthquake museum and old Tencent soil the Qiang people used for construction. We also think there is an urgent need for collective experiments to explore the diversity of local traditions, vegetation, and ancient wisdom that transcends territory and geography.
震后博物馆作为我们的研究对象，尝试探讨在岷江上游
How humans respond to natural disasters reflects how we manage ruins and our reconstructive technologies. We should think, will the dialogue between the ancient times and the future provide a shelter for other species and materials? This also shows there are multiple connections to global climate change, industrial and technological development, and political economy when reflected in local ecological events.
自然灾难的态度，反映出我们如何面对废墟与重建的技术。
Habitats can help us rethink what locality is when we view them scientifically in the context of global warming. Geology influenced by human engineering thus synchronizes with ancient geological heritage. The video Observation Point, exhibited in the Shanghai Biennale, begins with a villager living in the upper reaches of the Min River. His house changes, as does his observation of mountains and rivers across several ecological events. This video explores the topographically complex Min River Basin and how individual lives and wisdom may record long-term plant cultivation and water measurement in an irreversible, non-anthropocentric time system. A geologist once mentioned, the whole Min River Basin has experienced a very long history of geological evolution, which included the formation of its topographical features. So the geological composition can at least be dated back hundreds of millions of years. We can see this geological evolution as another kind of melting, and this then allows us to consider the evolution of humans.
不可逆的时间系统中，去实践长期的植物种植和测水记录。地质学者谈到，整个岷江流域，它的地质演化，包括地貌的形成，有非常漫长的一个历史。
Although remotely sensed images can be converted to map scale, the heterogeneity and complexity of the Earth continue to be thorny problems in ecological studies. River systems that receive water from melting snow form a coupling symbiosis in the lands which they flow through. They tighten the relationships between species and the land, such as in the Dujiangyan irrigation system, located at the Min River's pickup and drop-off point. The ancients took advantage of the riverbed's elevation and its steep drop to the plain to build a self-flowing irrigation system that could support the entirety of Sichuan's Tengdu Plain. This anthropocentric water management technology gave birth to a unique water management structure by utilizing the geographic landscape and the physical form of water.
古人正是利用了河床高点与山前平原的地势落差，开创了自流灌溉的水利系统，灌溉整个四川成都平原。这一以人类为中心的治理技术，与水的物质形态和地理面貌再次相愈合，创造了独特的水系治理结构。
The creation of the Museum of Water Systems between 2015 and 2018 was inspired by the geology and terrain of glaciers and snowy mountains in high-altitude regions. The melted water and trickling bodies of water merge and flow to create a unique geographical environment. It was also inspired by the Dujiangyan irrigation system, a work of local wisdom and collaboration between humans and non-humans. We thought about physical structures divided by the landscape. We started with the question, are the relationships with the social scenes in the down reaches disappearing? We used one of the locals on used boats to prepare a site with some abandoned timber. They would serve as reflections of my idea, a metaphor for the evolution of the water system. We tried to reimagine and reconnect water systems in a new geological environment. We traveled on the temporary route and established partnerships along the way to redefine the fixed-form narrative under accelerated urbanization and constantly changing and reorganized social life.
经由临时行走的路线、沿途合作、展示，来改写城市化进程在加速的发展下 社会生活不断被重组配置的固定论述。
This is also a fixed form narrative of melting. Melting is a specific form of bodies of liquid. The moisture it generates may combine with or attach to the surface of everything. It may also penetrate deep into everything. As a medium, it is floating, highly mobile, highly permeable, immersible, and omnipresent. It disperses in various social spaces and natural environments.
无所不在，弥散在各种不同的社会空间和自然环境中。
With that, we would like to offer our congratulations regarding the official opening of the third phase of One Exhibition for the 13th Shanghai Biennale's Bodies of Water at the Power Station of
正
Art.
式开幕，谢谢。
Wet-Togetherness is a collaboration between e-flux and the 13th Shanghai Biennale, Bodies of Water, 水体, curated by Andrés Jaque, Marina Otero Verzier, Lucia Pietroiusti, Filipa Ramos, and Mi, and organized and promoted by the Power Station of Art. This podcast has been edited by José Luis Espejo and Ruben Cole, with the sound design of Tomoko Sauvage, coordination of Roberto González García, and locutions by Yang.